Welcome, Bronco Nation. This very exciting series. I got Ron Counts on today, and we're going to be discussing a little series I'm liking to call 10 and 10, where we're going to be covering the top 10 questions facing Boise State football in 10 separate, right about 10-minute segments. I'm, of course, Bronco Blameyer. With me today is Ron Counts from the Idaho Statesman. For great Boise State coverage all season long, make sure that you follow Ron. Make sure you follow Idaho Statesman on Twitter. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel, of course. And then Ron is also going to be writing an accompanying article with each of these videos, going a little bit more in depth about what we discussed today. So make sure that you go and subscribe to the Idaho Statesman as well so you don't miss out on any of that great content. Thank you all for being here, and let's get to the questions. All right, so the question for today is, can Boise State get back to 10 wins? Obviously, last season, Boise State's first 10-win performance under Andy Avalos, getting to that 10-3 record with a nice bowl win. Since 1999, Boise State only has 6 seasons where they were under 10 wins on the year. That's 18 out of 24 years they've had 10 or more wins, and that includes the COVID year. Since 2003, Boise State is the second winningest team in the FBS. They were number one most winningest, but a couple of down years kind of brought them down to that second place spot, but they're still really close to that number one slot. 81.7% winning percentage since 2003. Ohio State has an 84.9% winning percentage. ESPN has Boise State going 9-3 according to their FPI percentages. Losses drawing from Washington, UCF, and Memphis. And it's notable that that first game versus Washington, which is drawing a lot of conversation right now, Boise State is a heavy underdog, 17.9% chance of winning according to ESPN, and they are 15-point underdogs according to Vegas. So, question for you here is 10 wins this as a 10-win season the expectation for Boise State fans?
I think so. I mean, more so, I think a Mountain West championship and a bowl win is just expectation. But I mean, you look at this program and the history of success they've had here. You mentioned it, 18 10-plus win seasons. I mean, that's really impressive no matter what level of football you're playing at. That's impressive. Winning is hard, and winning consistently is even harder. And you look at the job that Andy Avalos and his staff did last year. They opened the season 2-2. They lose a game they should not have lost to UTEP, and then they turn it around. And that is maybe the most difficult thing in coaching to do. You know, when things are losing, when things are not going the right way, the mood in the locker room is low, energy is low. You got to find a way to change that. And Andy Avalos did that last year. They ended up going 10-4 last year. And that performance is a big reason why Andy Avalos is on the Bobby Dodd Trophy watch list this year as one of the best coaches in the country. I mean, like I said, turning a season around the way they did last year. Obviously, Talon Green has a lot to do with it. Dirk Cutter had a lot to do with it. But turning a season around the way they did last year is a hard thing to do, and they made it look pretty easy.
Well, it's not an easy schedule for Boise State. It's actually a little bit more comparable to that 2021 season when you talk about strengths that they're facing here. They open up at Washington, and they have UCF at home, a game I'll be at. They then have North Dakota at home, at San Diego State, at Memphis, San Jose State at home, at Colorado State, Wyoming, at Fresno State, New Mexico, at Utah State, and then Air Force. So when you look at that schedule, and again, I said it's not an easy one, what do you think presents the toughest challenge for Boise State, and who do you think will pose the toughest conference test to the Broncos?
So the toughest challenge has got to be those first 2 games. Washington and UCF, I mean, that is a tough draw. I did some research, and the last time Boise State started the season 0-2 was 2005 when they lost at Georgia and at Oregon State. So, I mean, 2 tough losses there. But you look at Washington, probably the best team in the Pac-12 this year. Could open up the season top 10 nationally. They're going to open up the season top 15 nationally at worst. Michael Penix is a Heisman candidate. I can see them losing that game. And then UCF is riding high right now. UCF has got athletes. They got a great coach. They've moved up to the Big 12 this year. They're riding high. Their confidence is really high. So that's going to be a tough home opener right there. Memphis on the road is going to be tough, but I have Boise State beating Memphis there, but I can realistically see them losing those first 2 non-conference games going into the season. And then you look at the conference schedule. The Mountain West Conference is really is a little bit down this year, and I think the conference is top heavy. But you look at some tough games here late in the season. They have back-to-back games against Wyoming and Fresno State. That's going to be 2 of the best defenses in the conference. Wyoming has probably the best defensive front 7 in the conference. Fresno State has the best cornerback in the conference in Cam Lockridge. They have a lot of pieces there. They have an NFL-bound linebacker in Lavelle Bailey. So those 2 back-to-back games are going to be tough. And then that last game of the season is against Air Force. Air Force is a team that I'd much rather play early in the year than late in the year. You're already beat up late in the year. You don't know how healthy you're going to be. You got to get prepared for that tough offensive, triple option scheme that they run. And then think about this. They might beat Air Force or lose to Air Force and turn around and have to play Air Force again the next week in the championship game. So that's just a tough game right there. So, my prediction right now, I'm in agreement with ESPN. I have them at 9-3. I have them losing those first two games, and then I have one more loss in there, whether it's to Air Force or Fresno State or Wyoming, maybe even San Jose State. Who knows? I think they drop one conference game, but 9-3 is still pretty respectable.
9-3 with a chance to get to 10-3 with either a win in the Mountain West Championship game or a win in the bowl game. You'll still have two games, hopefully, in that record that you'll have a chance to go for. I agree. Air Force at the end of the season is tough. Boise State has dropped late season games to Air Force before. Most notably, Harson's third season at Boise State, they lost late in the season to Air Force and ended up going and then losing to Baylor as well that year. So, yeah, Air Force tough. Last in the year is tough. Do you expect them to end up facing Air Force in the Mountain West Championship? Again, with the pod system that the Mountain West has, that you can face anybody in the conference twice. If they end up facing a team like Air Force, do you expect them to be able to get that Mountain West Championship game this year or win that Mountain West Championship game?
I think so. I mean, obviously, it's tough to beat a team twice because they're going to come with a very different game plan. Air Force is always tough to play because of that triple option. Air Force is going to have a really good running game again this year. John Lee Eldridge is going to step in for Brad Roberts. He's a really talented runner. Jensen Jones is their quarterback, who's another talented runner. So again, they're going to have one of the best rushing attacks in the country, but they're also going to have one of the best defenses in the conference. Trey Taylor is a really good safety for Air Force. They might have the best secondary in the conference. Alex Mock is one of the best linebackers in the conference. So I in my predicted order of finish right now, I have Boise State as the champion, Air Force finished second, Fresno State third, and then there's a big drop off there. You look, I have San Jose State, San Diego State, Wyoming, all in that next tier, and they're almost interchangeable in my mind because all three of those programs have so many questions. San Jose State has a really veteran quarterback in Chavon Cordero. They have some nice pieces on defense, but their offense was really inconsistent last year. I don't see that changing. San Diego State lost a lot from last year. They still have some pieces on defense, but their starting quarterback was a safety this time last year. So God knows what they're going to do. And then you look at Wyoming. I talked about Wyoming. They're really interesting to me. They're a program, again, tons of talent in the defensive front seven. Easton Gibbs is probably the best linebacker in the conference. Jordan, I can't pronounce his last name. Burgoyne is my best guess. Cody Godbow and Devon Harris are three of the best defensive linemen in the conference. So their defense is going to be solid, but you have no idea what Wyoming is going to have offensively. Peasley's a decent quarterback, but not great. They lost their leading rusher. They brought in a kid from Northern Illinois, but you don't know what he's going to do. So those three programs there are kind of interchangeable in the middle of the pack. And then you look at the rest of the teams. I have Colorado State coming in behind Wyoming, followed by UNLV, Utah State, Nevada, Hawaii, and New Mexico bringing up the rear. UNLV is an interesting one for me this year, man. They're a bit of a wild card. They got a new offensive coordinator. Their offense really looked pretty good last year. They got a quarterback in Doug Brumfield who has NFL size and NFL arm. So if they can get their defense together and stop some people, they could make some noise this year.
So looking at this schedule, looking at what you're predicting a 9-3 finish, obviously 9-3 is probably going to keep Boise State out of a New Year's Six bid. But what type of record would you say they would need on this schedule to be able to make a legitimate challenge for the New Year's Six? Do they need to go undefeated?
I think they'd have to go undefeated in conference play for sure. For sure. I think they could survive a loss to Washington. Because Washington's going to be so highly ranked all season unless they stumble. But they really can't survive a loss to UCF and Memphis. They've got to beat either UCF or Memphis if they want to stay in that conversation. And in reality, Memphis is the game they've got to target because Memphis is their main competition in the group of five now. Given that Cincinnati, Houston, UCF are all gone, you look at Memphis, UTSA, East Carolina, maybe App State. Those are the top group of five teams right now. So one of those teams is going to get that next year. One of those teams is going to get that bid, that first CFP bid. So a win over Memphis goes a long way, but they cannot afford to go 0-3 or 1-3 in non-conference play. They got to beat either UCF or Memphis.
Well, obviously, a New Year's Six game would be great for Boise State fans. But at this point, I think Andy Avalos and the team, they're just focused on getting that first Mountain West Championship game under their belt. It sounds like it's achievable this year. Their non-conference schedule is super challenging, but the Mountain West Conference schedule is maybe not as tough as it's been in previous years. I doubt that Pac-12 bound San Diego State is going to make much of a challenge this year for them. So it's going to be a different conversation for Boise State as far as focusing fans' expectations. That's something we'll talk about in a later video. But I think I agree with you. I'm not going to throw out my record predictions. I'm going to be doing a later video on that. But I do agree with you in that general realm of they can get to that conference championship game. I think they can win this conference championship. And I am going to be excited with a 9 to 10 win season for Boise State, regardless, because, again, you start off your first season, Boise State 7-5. Next year, you go to 10-3 against a very tough conference schedule. If you can get back that 10-win season, that would be a big step here for Andy Avalos in his third year for the program. So, again, we'll talk more about that in the future. For our next video, we're going to be talking about who is going to take over that wide receiver spot, that number 1 wide receiver spot for Boise State. And we are having a great series here. We've had 10 videos total that we're doing. We've already completed 5 of them. This was the 6th in the series. So make sure you go check out that entire playlist. It's been a great discussion. I'm excited for the next 5. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. And as always, go Big Blue.